إن الحمد لله نحمده تعالى ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله الله تعالى بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره الكافرون. نحمده تعالى على نعمائه لا نحصي ثناء عليه، وكما أثنى على نفسه أو أثنى عليه رسوله عليه الصلاة والسلام نشكره ولا نكفره، نؤمن به ونتوكل عليه، هو مولانا وعلى الله فليتوكل المؤمنون. ثم أما بعد، أحبتي في الله، هناك مقولة يقولها العرب: ما أشبه اليوم بالبارحة. ما أشبه اليوم بالبارحة. How similar today with yesterday or with the past. This saying got me thinking to do a little research. And as I was trying to figure out what I want to research, I wanted to compare what we have today to something that was considered the greatest dynasty in our history. Now we can talk about the time of the Rasul and his companions, but I honestly wanted to stay away from that because some might consider it's an unfair comparison. Even with the collapse of Al-Khilafah, it is also probably an unfair comparison. But I want to compare what we have today to a dynasty that lasted over 800 years. It is also the greatest travesty that we have ever seen in our history. For 800 years, we used to have a khilafah. We used to rule. We used to control. For 800 years, we were what people wanted to become. We were what people idolized. Within those first 600 years, people around the globe would be honored to send their children to study and to acquire the skills of life and talents that they can return to their countries and families with pride and honor. For 800 years, we had something called an Andalus. An Andalus. From the year 92 until the total collapse in 1492. Spain today was known to be an Andalus. marched into what we know today, Europe, and were only miles away from Paris. They got to the mountains that oversee what we know today of Paris in France. The extent of civilization that Al-Andalus had was never seen and probably will never be seen again. That in itself will require many khutbahs and lectures for us just to cover the science and technology of that time and agriculture and absolutely magnificent history of human growth and excellence. But what I want to talk about today is how can such a dynasty, an empire, such powerful rule and magnificent growth and civilization collapse to non-existence, to totally oblivion, where there's no recollection of what was, even in the minds of the people that used to reference themselves to that part of the world. It does not even resonate today. For many of us as Muslims to mention those centuries of history, of pride and honor and dignity. It's like it was a myth. Some kind of a movie that was long past as fiction. And it wasn't true. And even if you go to visit today, there's only reminiscence of what was. So what caused such a dynasty to collapse? Now, I'm sure there are many reasons for such an empire to totally come to an end. But I just want to focus on the few that truly were the main cause of the end of Al-Andalus, the end of Al-Umayyun in Europe, the collapse of humanity, as it used to be known, to the travesty of what we know today. Because I think with the collapse of Al-Andalus, humanity lost its core values. And if time permits, I will mention why I believe that humanity at large, not just Muslims, but humanity at large, lost its way with the collapse of Al-Andalus. So what caused Al-Andalus to come to an end? The strongest empire that Muslims has ever seen. One, is the people of Andalus forgot what made them who they are. They lost their way Islamically. Islam was never their identity anymore. It might have been their rituals, but not their identity. Not who they are, but maybe some of them what they did. It wasn't them being Muslims in all their selves and beliefs and behavior. It was just we're left to be Muslims by name, or maybe by rituals. Islam wasn't what they considered their way of life. It was just something in their lives. They lost their way so much that they were bragging about everything that's immoral, unethical. Drugs became the norm in alcohol. Prostitution became an everyday scene. People would brag about how many women they would encounter in the nights and clubs they will spend their time in. As we said, how similar today is with the past. Establishing institutions of, what can I say, porn in every corner of the cities of Al-Andalus became the norm, where homosexuality was praised. Y'all think today is the time of homosexuality? Read the books of Al-Andalus. You'll see the bragging of homosexuals under the rule of Islam, or so-called Islam. Poetry was about the majun, of how one can reach easily everything that's immoral. How the beaches and the rivers became moments of get-togethers for every filth that you and I can think today. I don't know, maybe one of the reasons we totally erased the memories of Al-Andalus is because that was the norm of everyday's life. Historians write that the mukhannathin, what we know today of homosexuals, would be at the corners of streets for pickup. And you would see prostitution in some areas in some parts of the world, where nudity was an art. If I was to say these things, and I didn't say these existed in a Muslim country, you would not believe so. You would think this is something in Vegas or some parts of the European countries. No, that was under the rule of what was known to be Islam. Scholars of that time were too busy addressing these matters and argued amongst each other about frivolous things. The Muslim empire was being attacked on all corners, and we will find the scholars of that time in markets and settings and masajids discussing, should we put our hands here or here in salah? Should we leave them spreading out? Which should we have first reach the floor? Should it be our knees or hands? Should we recite al-basmalah loudly or secretly? What kind of beard should a man have? Is salah accepted without a cover on the head or not? That was what was important for them. It wasn't that clubs are at every corner. Homosexuality is in everyone's life. Adultery was a badge of honor. one state after another are falling into the hands of the enemy. Or more worse, that we found the leaders of those small regions, after they destroyed the Khilafah in the unity of Ummah, they ended up creating smaller regions or countries, Tawa'if, tribes, and claimed them states. And every one of them looked at itself as a might and empire within itself. And they were incapable of protecting themselves from themselves, not from an enemy. But we still found the scholars at that time ignoring all of that and focused on frivolous things that do not matter most or much. In fact, we found them supporting dividing the Ummah based on ethnic or race, based on tribals, more than it is faith. And they will encourage that division. Worse, they will even praise the rulers of that time for how much they have spread in the country filth. They would jump on saying, obeying the ruler reflects your obedience to the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and your obedience to Allah Ta'ala, regardless of what they did. They led the Ummah to its destruction. So if you read that history, after people losing their faith, it was the scholars losing their way. And they caused the loss of what we have forgotten. 3, those rulers of that time were more about their chairs and power than about the unity in Ummah. They went to as far as seeking the help of the Christians, the enemies, to help them march and attack their brothers and sisters in their own faith. Let me give you the story. There were rulers within that time, like Bani Nasr. They would take their own children and give them as hostages to Christians. So Christians will send troops so they can attack their fellow Muslims. And their children will stay hostages until they pay whatever they were agreed on to pay. They will celebrate the collapse of one of the Tawa'if, one of the Muslim rulers, and congratulate the Christian countries for defeating them. Abu Razin, one of those rulers, when Tulaytala collapsed in the hands of the Christians, he himself marched with much of gifts and gems to give it to the Christians to celebrate their victory against their fellow Muslims. The irony is, when they returned his gift, they gave him a monkey. I guess that's what they saw in him. He brought that monkey back to brag about what he was given by the Christians, thinking it was an honor. How lost is that? They would apologize to the Christians if there was a defeat on their end. And they will offer their support to fight their own brothers and sisters. ما أشبه اليوم بالبارحة. I recall a line of poetry that once says, he said, there's nothing that harms me more. ما يغنسني في أندلس. What he hates more about Al-Andalus, he said the presence of names like Al-Mu'tasim wal-Mu'tadid. That the rulers used to name themselves Al-Mu'tasim wal-Mu'tadid. He said they're names of countries that have no might, just like a cat that resembles when it hisses a lion when it's not. أشباح مملكة في غير موضعها كالهرد يحكي اتفاقا سورة الأسد. We tend to be shocked today that one would hear that a country like Jordan or Egypt or Saudi Arabia will make sure that no missiles fall on Israel. And we would wonder, why would they do that? Why would they defend Israel and make sure that no missile or harm goes on Israel when at the same time not one of their missiles was launched to protect the people of Gaza? And how idiot we are. We give them credits as being Muslims. By name, yes. But we tend to forget history. This is not new that we see today. This is not an abnormal anomaly that we see in our history today. No, this is a repetition of exactly what has happened in history in the past. Oh, we wonder, why would a brother kill a brother today to take control of his rule? When we saw that in Andalus, one would kill 3 of his brothers so he could stay in power. Or why would the border be closed from the side of Egypt and no food would be offered to our brothers and sisters in Gaza? While maybe the Americans are dropping off some things from the air for them to be killed by it. This is exactly what our history has shown us in the past. We have a country that barely can be seen on the map, like Bahrain. You can't even find it in the map. It's a dot in the midst of water. But it will align itself. With every enemy that comes on board to go after those who give dawah. You would be shocked. And I don't know why. That the prisons of Egypt and Saudi Arabia are full with scholars. That is exactly what was happening in Al-Andalus. And you'll be shocked why some so-called scholars will stand in defending their rulers for imprisoning their fellow colleagues. We tend to forget history. That's why we're always fooled. And I don't know who's worse, the traitors or the fools. Who's worse? The traitors or the fools that constantly get fooled every single day? And amongst us sometimes we'll find reasons to defend some of these countries because then we fall back to the same thing of the patriotism so-called for countries that should not exist in the first place. I would urge and encourage every one of us to read about Al-Andalus. See how Al-Yamaniyun wal-Qaysiyun kept fighting for centuries over silly things. For over 40 years, they fought because one of them opened a letter that he should not. I would encourage everyone to read history so we're not fools. What the Arab countries are doing today, not Muslim countries, Arab countries are doing today, is nothing short of mimicking what the Tawa'if did in Al-Andalus. And at some point, mark my word, these countries would see their end. Just like Ibn Razin, when he went to give that gift, when they reached his region, he found his end too. He found his end. They appointed non-Muslims to vital positions in the state. Just like these so-called leaders do not need to appoint anyone to those vital positions in the state. They will wait patiently next to the phone when they receive a call from the White House for what to do or not. They don't even need to appoint today. They are the appoint who are appointed by their appointees. We are more pitiful today, wallahi, than we were at Al-Andalus. At least during Al-Andalus, there were still groups that were fighting until they met their Lord with honor. Today, I don't know those groups do exist except the people in Gaza. And they themselves could not be saved by many of the tongues of so-called Muslim leaders today or scholars. أقول ما تسمعون وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه غفور رحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده تعالى ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ثم أما بعد. I want to come to a conclusion because my time is out. But I want to read this. This is a Christian historian. His name is Kennedy. He said, العرب هووا عندما نسوا فضائلهم التي جاءوا بها وأصبحوا على قلب متقلب يميل إلى الخفة والمرح والاسترسال للشهوات. He said the Arabs, they used to reference to the Muslims, Arabs, he said the Muslims fell when they forgot who they are and what made them great. He's talking about Islam. And they leaned towards singing and dancing and pornography. I'd like to finish by reminding you with this ayah. وَكَمْ قَصَمْنَا مِنْ قَرْيَةٍ كَانَتْ ظَالِمَةً وَأَنْشَأْنَا بَعْدَهَا قَوْمًا آخَرِينَ فَلَمَّا أَحَسُّوا بَأْسَنَا إِذَا هُمْ مِنْهَا يَرْكُضُونَ لَا تَرْكُضُوا وارجعوا إلى ما أتركتم فيه ومساكنكم لعلكم تسألون. There will be a time where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring His wrath on these traitors in these countries that betrayed us. They have jammed our freedom and stripped it away and silenced our voices from speaking the truth and stripped us from our dignity and took away every integrity that Islam has instilled in us. There will be a day where the loss of lives that we witness today will get their revenge. And rulers that would pay $450 million to buy a portrait of Christ on a cross will meet their doom. Where they're more into buying a $650 million yacht so they can get drunk, to find that they need to answer to that too. Our loss today is our gain tomorrow, inshallah. The traitors of today will be replaced by the decency and honesty of the righteous of people in the future. This generation has 60 to 100 years. It will change. وتلك الأيام نداولها بين الناس. It will change. And honestly, all of us here will change too. Because if we are honest with each other, very few of us, even in this masjid, are any better than those who we see on the TV screen. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا دينا إلا قضيته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة هي لك رضا ولنا فيها صلاحا إلا أعنتنا على قضائها ويسرتها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم عليك بخونة هذه الأمة يا رب العالمين. اللهم عليك بخونة هذه الأمة يا رب العالمين. اللهم أرنا فيهم يوما أسودا. اللهم ابدلنا خيرا منهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم لا تولي علينا إلا خيارنا ولا تولي علينا شرارنا. اللهم اغفر لنا تقصيرنا. اللهم اغفر لنا عجزنا. اللهم اغفر لنا تكاسلنا. اللهم اغفر لنا ما تعلم وما لا نعلم إنك على ذلك قدير. اعلموا أحبتي في الله أن الله تعالى يقول إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. ثم اعلموا أن الله تعالى يقول إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. فاذكروا الله العظيم الجليل يذكركم واشكروه على نعمه يزدكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله أعلم.